All right. It's Will, a.k.a. ZombieNikon, and I'm here with...
Jake, a.k.a. the Big Chungus from Among Us.
And we're going to talk about stuff. So, how was your day? We're recording this a bit later than we usually do. It's Monday instead of Sunday, and I'm off work, so I haven't seen you in like 2 days.
48 hours or something like that. Yeah. No, it's my day's going good, just the usual. Just showing up to work, doing what I got to do, and then taking a good lunch break, you know.
Yeah, how was your Sunday?
It was good. I spent a lot of time with the family. Went to Lowe's and got more stuff to water my yard and all that kinds of stuff in a vain attempt to have green grass in the Midwest.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like
I didn't really do anything yesterday. I think I did watch Mortal Kombat. We did watch Mortal Kombat yesterday,
Nice.
the new one, and I rewatched Dread, the original with Sylvester Stallone, as well, which is amazing because apparently Brie hadn't seen it. At least she didn't remember seeing it.
Really?
Yeah. So I showed it to her, and she was like, "I don't remember any of this. I thought I had seen it, but."
It gets a lot of flack, but I really love some of the one-liners in there because it's like, murdering of a street judge, code 243.11. What's that, life? Death.
Yeah,
Shoots him in the head. Yeah.
Yep. That, and then on top of all that, it is really like cheesy. Not to mention, once I think we've watched it together before, he straight up murders so many people. Like judges, other like just random cops.
All
civilians.
in the name of the law.
All in the name of the law.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ridiculous amount of carnage in that movie. I can't believe it. But that, and then have you seen Mortal Kombat yet?
I have not seen Mortal Kombat yet. We just watched King Kong versus Godzilla. Or Godzilla versus Kong, I think is the actual
Godzilla
title.
versus Kong.
Just watched that last night. Finally got to do that, so that was fun.
Yeah, that one's pretty epic.
Yeah, it's good. It's a great monster fight movie.
I think we briefly talked about this too, but Godzilla versus Kong, whatever that universe is, has like 5 movies, something like that now, and it is expansive.
Yep.
To say the least. It blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. And then it feels like they scaled him down, though, compared to like the first Godzilla. It feels like he was a lot smaller than he was in previous movies.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And they actually allow you to see him instead of him being like shrouded in smoke. Yeah. I also remember, if you remember the 1998 one or whatever, where they have like the worm guy, and he ends up like going and getting taken to New York with his like ex-girlfriend as a reporter.
Oh, yeah. The 1999 Godzilla. Yeah.
Yeah. In that one, I was pretty sure they called Godzilla a female, but I wonder if that was just like a 90s thing.
It was
like Godzilla's like what do they call it?
They did the whole Jurassic Park, like he's both. Yeah, so he could create
She's
eggs.
angry.
Yeah.
Clever girl.
Yeah, exactly, and then so she could make eggs for herself and then laid them in a giant stadium and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
She was amorphic or something like that.
Asexual,
yeah.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. They're asexual because she or he can reproduce without having to have another person there.
Right, at least in that version.
And then in this Godzilla, like the new series, they never like hinted at or do any of that. They just automatically call him a he constantly. And then I guess was Mothra. Mothra was a female. Mm-hmm. Why? It's a moth.
Because Mothra takes care of the world.
Oh yeah. That's Mother Mothra.
Yes, exactly.
Because you have to be motherly to take care of the world. You couldn't. Godzilla. They in the Godzilla versus Kong, actually, they talk about how Godzilla was like the savior because fucked over all the other big ones.
Yeah. He was the alpha, and then they were hiding Kong for some reason, and they like retconned all that stuff to be like, oh, there's a storm perpetually on the island now or something.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, if he leaves the island, Godzilla's gonna find him. And it's like, what's about that island that makes it so special, that they can't find him or anything like that,
Because there's a perpetual storm. Obviously, alpha energy doesn't go through storms. Yeah.
Oh, God. They'll go through the entire Earth.
Yeah, the entire Earth.
The ocean, the core, the hollow Earth and everything like that. But, not a storm. No, no, it was good. It's really good for a monster movie. It's fun to watch big monsters beat the crap out of each other.
So much death, though. Like, when you actually think about it, how much shit they destroy in those cities.
Yeah.
Just, like, walking up. And they're like, oh, a squirrel, and turns, and Godzilla's tail just takes down like fucking 100-story buildings and shit on top of people.
And I was thinking about it, and that was almost really irresponsible for them to have a tracker on Godzilla and be like, he's headed to Hong Kong, and then like they didn't evacuate,
didn't warn, didn't do any of that shit.
They're like, it's a natural phenomenon. It's like, you guys have known about this for 48 hours, you jags.
Yeah, they've also known about Godzilla for literal years. At that point.
Oh, and then the biggest issues I had is like going into it, I was like, all right, so they're really not going to actually fight each other. It's going to be Batman versus Superman. So I was waiting for one of them to say Martha through the entire second fight.
That's basically what happened.
Like, yeah, and then I was like, there's going to be a third thing that pops up, and that's what they're actually going to fight. And then, but I do say that Godzilla was the fighter because they went like 3 rounds, and he won 1 and 3, so he won 2 out of 3 rounds.
Oh, you mean Godzilla was the winner? You said Godzilla was the fighter.
Yeah. Well, they're both, as they were fighting.
No, hardcore. Godzilla won that fight. Bree and I were definitely rooting for Kong, though, and it's because Kong has a history of just getting his ass beat for no reason.
Right.
Like, he goes in, he basically gets tranquilized off of Skull Island, taken to fucking trying to be like a sideshow freak, and then he ends up getting killed in like New York or whatever because like a bunch of humans
from the
were,
original
like,
stories and stuff. Yeah.
It's real sad. It's real sad. And then they gave that girl like the power to like communicate with him like psychically or whatever, and then she like taught him sign language and shit, and like
exactly. And then
epic.
It's really immersive, and it's interesting to see how much they've expanded on that said universe and all that kind of stuff, you know. And what was the other trippy thing? I really liked how every time you saw Kong, at least for the first half of the movie, they played classic music from like the 80s and like 70s, all that kind of stuff. To kind of like slow down the pacing of like showing that he's more peaceful.
Yeah, and to make it feel different on top of all that anyway. And then I don't know if it's just because I was reading too much into it, but the when they actually go into like the core of the earth or whatever and do all that weird shit with the gravity and whatever.
Because everyone knows if you tunnel just 100 feet down, there's a portal that teleports you to the center of the earth, apparently.
Exactly, as long as you're in Antarctica. It doesn't work if you're digging anywhere else. That's why when you're a kid and you try to dig to China, it doesn't work.
Got you.
Yeah, because you have to be in Antarctica. There has to be snow around you first.
Right.
But beyond that, the fucking axe is like a back spine of like Godzilla.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Bree didn't notice it at first, and I was like, that looks just like the little spines on the back of Godzilla. And then he like picks it up and holds it, and it glows, and you can see like fucking Godzilla glowing.
Yeah, because that temple thing that he walked through, all those skeletons were Godzilla skeletons.
Yeah.
Or whatever creature you would call it.
Yeah, just giant
Titanicus, Godzillacus, or something like that. You know, and like
Jesus.
But yeah, that's my lovely wife pointed that out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense because like all the skeletons. And
but I just don't understand how all the Kongs, the giant monkeys, I don't understand how they all died. Like I guess that's something that they never really, you know.
Supposedly they fought each other, I think, like to the brink of extinction kind of thing, because they're both intelligent. They can both find each other apparently psychically all over the planet unless there's a storm. And what I was waiting for was the floating purple rocks that they showed or whatever. I was waiting for Kong to straight up forge an axe. Like you just see him like
just hammering on an axe, clinching it.
Yeah, like Mephiston or something like that. Like in the hills of Greek mythology or whatever his name happens to be. Just
like, oh man, that would have been awesome. Yeah. Because they had all the other like areas on the ground where like the other axes could like fit or whatever. Yeah. Almost like it would unlock some secret puzzle, but then they obviously don't have any of those axes or anything like that.
Right.
Which is pretty crazy. I don't know. That just seems really deep and subtle for a movie that's about, you know.
There was the other subtlety is the guy that was mind controlling Mechagodzilla before he got brain wiped was the son of the like main Asian scientist in the previous movies. That was like, oh, Gojira, he's king of monsters. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Huh. That in the lore, that is the son of that's his son, but they don't ever explain that. They don't ever. Well, it's alleged that he's the son because they never really address it. But that's kind of like that's the emphasis that they put on it. Right there.
Mind blown. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's good. I think it's fun that there are a few subtleties there, you know, and all that kind of stuff in a monster movie. But it's not so crazy that you're like digging through everything to try to piece it together.
Yeah.
You know,
and then Mortal Kombat is awesome. So they it's almost like they're trying to establish their own universe, which I'm here for. I love Mortal Kombat. I'm not a fighting game player by any means, but I do enjoy the lore and the characters behind it. And they straight up, like, they have those, like, cheesy moments. It's like, flawless victory and shit like that.
Oh, nice.
So awesome.
Perfect.
Like, they do it in a way that isn't over the top. Does that make sense? Like the original Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
This one is way more, like, subtle, and it's just kind of, like, just cheesy one-liners from an Asian action movie. And on top of that, all of the, like, CGI and the fight scenes are actually choreographed well, which I think is why they didn't go with, like, big name actors, right? So I think Bree actually had mentioned this to me as well, but you know, Kinshi, the blind like samurai, from the games, I think he was he was in like Mortal Kombat 10 or something. But he has like the bandana around his eyes because his eyes were like, I don't know, blown up or something. I didn't pay attention to it, but he's a really badass fighter, and he was one of my favorite fighters from the games. A lot of people were saying that like Keanu Reeves should play that guy because he looks a lot like him.
Right.
And he would obviously play it really well, but Keanu Reeves is getting up there in years, and I don't know if he'd be able to hang during all of the like fight scenes and stuff that they were doing. Because this is like one dude that's playing Liu Kang. He like just takes off his like shirt, and he is just like 0.5% of body fat, just fucking shredded, and he just like flexes on the dude, and the other guy's like, oh, whatever, stupid, and then he just beats the shit out of him. Like, it is insane.
Yeah.
So
Liu Kang.
There's not a lot of like big name actors in it, which I actually liked.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that a lot more than if they had a bunch of A-list actors in there.
Well, and another thing that's nice about a quality movie that's done with, like you said, kind of not known actors is you don't have to, you can actually pay everyone to do it well. So you can pay the writers more, you can pay the CGI more, all that kind of stuff. It expands your budget versus having to pay someone like Robert Downey Jr., like $250 million to be in a movie.
Yeah, on top of all that, and you could spend all that money on the good CGI, like with, Sub-Zero launching ice spikes into people and shit.
Yeah.
The other side of that is it's almost like they took fighters and then taught them to be actors versus trying to take actors like they did in the original and teaching them to be fighters. So the fighting is why you go to Mortal Kombat, right?
Right.
And it is so good.
Yeah.
I had a fun time with it.
Yeah, we plan on watching it. Obviously, we can't watch it around the kids, so we'll have to wait till they go to bed, but we do plan on watching it.
Yeah, it's actually rated R, so it's actually really
I highly imagine that it's rated R, yeah.
Well, the original was like PG or something.
Oh, okay.
So like it wasn't that good at all.
With the old original. My God. It was so cheesy.
It'd be the equivalent of making Deadpool PG, and that's why Ryan Reynolds was like, nah, fuck you, I'm doing this. Like, get out of here. Get out of here.
There's a rumor that Deadpool's going to take over Stan Lee's cameos. So I'm interested to see if that actually works out or not.
I've heard about that. I don't know, because they've already had... Loki's coming out, and I don't know if he's going to be in that. And then we've already had WandaVision, and...
Well, he hasn't been in the shows. They haven't really released any movies. They've pushed all of them back.
Yeah.
Because your next one, I believe, is Black Widow. Yeah, that one's coming out and this summer. And then, is it Doctor Strange in the Multiverse? I think it
Doctor
is,
Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That's what I'm here for.
It's going to be good. It's going to be real good.
Yeah, because I think it's supposed to kind of continue the whole WandaVision like story, if I'm not mistaken. Either that or it's going to be like right before, and then she does the whole Vision thing and goes into WandaVision. I don't know.
I think it'll be right after.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I think they were establishing her powers so that she can compete, because they even mentioned that she's more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, which is Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah. So
Doctor Strange.
No, 100%. Yeah, you're right. You're entirely right. So it would probably be after, whenever she's doing all that like weird shit with like her studying the Book of Shadows thing.
Yeah.
# spoiler alert. Watch this series if you haven't already.
Yeah, it's been out for 4 months now, I think.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus. Go buy it.
Go buy it. Buy another one, you rich bitch.
Buy another one. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying all the stuff that's coming out now.
Yeah, did you finish Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I have not. Okay. That's the next one that we're working on.
Nice. It's good.
Today, I was literally trying to make another 50 Cent Games video for Steam.
Oh, there you go.
$1.50 that I spent was in vain, though, because the 3 games I got weren't that good.
50 cents. So,
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna narrow it down to like horror games that are 50 cents or less.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
I feel like I have some pretty good reactions.
Because then at least you get like a jump scare or something out of it. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
But yeah, because I got one that was like a racing game, and I'm not that big of a racing game fan. I got one called Dude Simulator.
Dude Simulator?
Yeah, but it was a bunch of like just fart jokes and stuff, which is just not my humor at all. So it was happening, and I was like, ha ha ha. And it was starting to get to that thing where I was whenever like my old YouTube videos where I was trying to like force myself to play stuff that I didn't want to play. So I'll hop back in there and spend like another $1.50 and find like 3 more games. So,
big spender over here.
Yeah, big spender. Yeah. All in total, I think I've spent like, I don't know, $4 on like $4 on like 7 video games.
Heck yeah.
Over the past like 3 weeks. It's
awesome.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, man. I had no idea that these games existed. They're all obviously like indie games and stuff like that, but they're still like, some of them are actually really entertaining.
Got to support the little creator, They're the ones who come out with unique games versus your blockbusters that tend to be kind of repetitive and things like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. They're just constantly. But they just perform really badly. Like one of the games I was playing today, it had the apparently you get an achievement just for opening the game through Steam, but then it just kept cycling. So it was like ding, 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 the entire time I was playing the game because it was just coded poorly.
Yeah, makes sense. Awful. It'll be in the next patch.
Yeah. No. You think they patch these games?
Not even close.
A lot of these games I did find out too were people that are going to school for like computer science and like coding and like making video games, like actual like video game creators. They have to make like school projects where they make like a game where you have like a certain amount of like buttons, like a jump, a run, a shoot, whatever, and then you have to like take that stuff, code it into the game, and make that character be able to do that with like an end goal, right?
Right.
Or just, I guess there's a lot of like simulators out there as well, like that Dude Simulator or Kyle Simulator. I don't know if you saw my other video.
No, I haven't seen that one yet. Yeah. You just punching holes in drywall and stuff.
Yep. Punching holes in drywall.
Drinking Monster.
Yep.
Wearing flat brim hats.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. You have to go around and collect Monster cans while you punch holes in walls. And then you get a car, multiple cars, and you could slam them through the walls. And I discovered that you can reset in the like menu. You can reset the walls back to their default value. So I slammed a car into a wall. It was like flipped and all like messed up, and I couldn't get to it anymore. So I reset the value, and it just launched the car into the air. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Speed run hacks it. You know, like
that's my. That was my. Yeah, you need to watch that 50 Cent Games video. It's pretty epic. Yeah. I would skip through a lot of it because the first game I played in that one was a maze game.
Yeah, I watched
which
that.
Is also extremely common in that type of like world. And then I played the maze game. I played Kyle Simulator. I played. A shooter game, a first-person shooter game, but it was real glitchy and real buggy, and that's the only fun part about that game.
Right.
It's also a never-ending game, so you just have like a team of like 40 people and your team of 40 people. Not like all NPCs, not actual other players.
Yeah.
And then you just keep killing them, and then they keep killing you, and then it just keeps going endlessly, and so I had to like end it.
Wasn't there a way to do like Doom Eternal like that, where you could just set it to like unlimited everything? And then
probably,
yeah.
And then
or not Doom, but Unreal Tournament. Yeah.
And then the last one I found was it's a game called Tars, and it was I think the most expensive at like 75 cents. But it definitely looked like some sort of indie project from like some British people. And it's a horror game where you like spawn in and there's all these like weird vampire like monster things in the middle of the night trying to kill you, and you're like a medic trying to survive.
Right.
So the story wasn't all there for me, but yeah, it scared the shit out of me several times. So even if you skip to the end of that video and just watch that section of it, like I was scared out of my mind for a little bit because the things you can't hear them. And I have a pretty good headset, and I had the volume turned up really loud. You don't hear them until they're like screaming in your ear, and then all they have to do is like make contact with your character. They don't attack you or anything.
Yeah.
And then you die. So
gotcha.
And you have to restart the entire thing.
That sounds really intense.
Yeah. So it was like if I had a health pool, I have a tendency to like metagame stuff like that. So I have a health pool, so I know I can take like 3 hits from these guys and be fine, right? That's how I play Call of Duty Zombies and stuff too. That's how I know how to like dodge between them.
Yeah.
That one you don't have a health pool. It's just one hit and you're done. So it like freaked me the fuck out. It's just this like suspense buildup thing, and then you have like a limited amount of bullets to like kill them, and you know it takes like 3 bullets, and you only have 6, so you can only kill 2 of them, and then if you miss a shot, you're fucked. Like it was a good game.
Solid.
It was a good game. And that's why I want to do a series of 50 Cent games. But like, yeah, I just could not find them today. So I might have to play like Hitman or something. I need to upload to my YouTube channel because I think the podcast is the only thing I've been uploading in the last like 2-3 weeks. But
makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry. Rant over with that one. But
yeah, easy.
Main thing I wanted to talk about actually has to do with Rossi Boy. So my lovely wife did a one shot for us on Saturday.
Yeah.
And you were there for that. I thought she did a good job. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good time.
I was also swifty. So the discussion that I want to have with you before we get into Comic Down comments was how do you rule certain things? So for instance, Ross, he plays a bard,
right?
That does have the Jack of all trades feature, so I'm factoring that in here. But one of the things we had to do was we found a siren, and we had to get the heart of a siren for like our overall, story thing. He is supposed to be like the world famous Mikkel, son of Jack, right? A musician by trade. So one of the things he was saying, and this is a bit metagamey on his part, which is the other side of this coin, he was saying, I have a +5 to survival, and that's what she's making us do to like cut out this heart. So I should do it because I have a +5. I have the highest chance of success.
Right.
And then I pointed out that the barbarian has a +6 to their survival. So I mean, technically they have the highest amount, and then she ended up like cutting the heart out with like his help or whatever. So I guess the question is, would he even know how to cut out the heart of a siren? Like, has he just cut out people's hearts before? Like, is he like Mikkel, son of Jack the serial killer? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
And then, like, how would you actually go about ruling that? Like, is it a...
For me, it would probably be more difficult if you're not trained in it, even if you're slightly better at it, if that makes sense. Like, the DC would probably change.
And to clarify here, so he has a character that's actually probably every min-maxer's wet dream. He rolled an 18... I think it was 3 or 4 15s and then like a 14.
Yep.
So whenever he did the Tasha's, stuff, he basically maxed out his charisma because he's a bard. So he's a 20 for that. And then he basically managed to get 16s and all the other abilities because he took human.
Right.
So default, at a minimum, with Jack of all trades, every single one of his ability scores at a minimum is a +5.
Yep.
Because he's supposed to be like, I guess a Jack of all trades, just kind of good at everything. But to me... I don't know. It seems weird. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Just because your stats are really high, I wouldn't necessarily even allow him to do it. I'd be like, well, are you a serial killer? Do you know how to like cut people's hearts out? Like, and then if he's like, yeah, I could try it, whatever, Jack of all trades, and then you would have to set the DC higher.
So DC's being variable is always nice, depending on what people are trained in and stuff. I mean, you can always argue that adventurers are going to kind of know basic anatomy of creatures they're facing, humanoids, stuff like that. How well they cut out a heart or whether they accidentally pierce it and all that kind of stuff is completely different because they could be on the right side versus the left, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
you can have an idea, you can know how to cut into it. But yeah, it would probably, if you're not trained in it, it would probably be a higher DC is how I would rule it. It's not necessarily something that needs to be discussed at the table because then you have that whole metagamey of like, oh no, mine's a +6, mine's a +5. Ultimately, that's a 5% variable. And if someone's trained in it, it might be better for them to take over because they're actually like, no, I've actually had to butcher carcasses in the forest to survive and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit more attuned to it.
Well, it goes all the way back to what we were talking about before, where like if you have a character that has all 20s and all their stats because of whatever reason, then the game doesn't become fun anymore because they're just going to take everything over. Which is actually the discussion I had with Ross before we started playing because he had really high stats for everything.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess that's actually what I have written here is DCs aren't universal. They can be specific to each player depending on like how you do it. Because I know whenever I write my notes, if I'm like, okay, well they're gonna have to cut out the heart of a harpy, it's a little difficult, whatever. Like we'll make it a DC 15 because it's like a medium check or whatever. And then if the barbarian goes to do it and they have like proficiency in survival, I might even lower that to like a 13 or whatever, and then they have to just beat that. And then what I usually do is if it's like some random person that doesn't have proficiency in survival, doesn't know medicine, isn't using the appropriate skill for it or whatever, I'm just going to strength to rip it in half, right? Then it's going to go up to like a 20. Which I don't think my lovely wife knows any of that stuff because she's not like a DM.
Well, that's like a learned thing, like when I do my writing out, I do a tiered system. Like for perception checks and all that kind of stuff. So how successful somebody is. So like degrees of success essentially. So if so
like if you roll a 10 or higher this, 15 or higher this.
In all honesty, as morose as it sounds, cutting a heart out probably isn't that difficult. Cutting a heart out well is.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Cutting a heart out that we need to keep intact is the key there.
Exactly. Like, and I think that's so for me, it would be like 10 and it's like medium. Okay, cool. You have another chance because you have another body. So maybe you'll get a better one. But maybe this one will pass, and then like your 15 check is probably like, okay, you did it well enough that you have it, essentially, that kind of thing. That's at least the way that I would do it, or that when I write out my stuff, that's typically how I do it, especially with like perception checks, because you have people who because it's like hard not to notice like a exploding volcano in front of you. Like there's no way that people aren't going to notice it.
So it's really low to notice it.
But maybe your guy who's like actually like on the lookout with like a telescope might notice that, oh no, now there's a lava path flowing straight towards a town because there's a tiny town to the left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or like a dragon is erupting out of the lava.
Yeah, like, or that would be a 15. And then, like the 18 or the 20 would be that there's actually a creature inside the lava causing all this to happen. Most people can't see it from that distance because it blends in so well. Yeah. That kind of thing. And that's typically what I do is kind of give a tiered system. And then it allows players to feel like they have achieved or not achieved different things. So like, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to really focus on just the town then because that's all I saw, and then if the other people see the creature and they don't share it, that's on the party at that point in time, that kind of thing. Yeah. It kind of gives that role play element of, oh, I saw this very special thing, I get to share that with people now.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up perception because that's another thing that we're going to talk about here in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just something I noticed with that whole thing is because it was that thing of like, oh, I have a +5 as my minimum, so like I'm gonna do everything. You know what I mean? And Ross is a very metagamey player. I mean, I've had those talks with him before too, especially if you allow him to do that. Because even he admitted during that last thing when he was playing with the other Taylor as a DM,
right?
And they were supposed to be going after like he in the party, his character got like sent off to the airplane or whatever to do a bunch of other stuff. So he had to make a new character. And he knew that the party was going to be hunting these certain monsters.
Right.
Specifically that they had poison, so he was taking like protection from poison. He was a ranger, so he can hunt them. He like wanted to be able to do like X, Y, and Z, and he wanted to roll those certain stats and have higher like hit points and things like that. Because he knew he was going to be hunting monsters for those like 2-3 sessions he was playing it.
And I mean, I do remember that he did talk to his DM about it and stuff like that, because there are different things as far as min-maxing and stuff like that. Like, if he does that unprovoked without talking to his DM about it, that's one thing. If me as a DM goes up to a player and be like, hey, I need you to make a character for 2 or 3 sessions, they're going to hire you, so you're used to the area, all that kind of stuff, then I kind of understand that part of it, know? Kind of having a little bit of direction that says, okay, cool, I'm giving you permission, versus like, oh, you're going to be a random adventurer, so you wouldn't really know the area or anything like that. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, because the only thing that I didn't agree with that happened was after we started our adventure, we were allowed to swap out spells. And that was the only portion that me personally as a DM I would never allow.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, when I create a character, they do not exist solely for one adventure. Yeah. They exist in their world and their experiences, and whenever you're a spellcaster, that's what accumulates of what you've learned, what type of magicas you know, and that kind of stuff.
Oh, you're talking about where, because bards know their spells. They don't get to prepare spells like a wizard. Right. So
we were given permission essentially, like, oh, you guys are underwater for this entire thing, so you're allowed to do X, Y, Z and swap out certain abilities and stuff like that. Yeah. Which is fine, honestly, because you don't want people to be miserable, so it's not a bad call. It's just not a call that I would personally
Let's back this up beforehand. Anyway,
yeah.
I mean, I was already talking to Brie about all this because obviously I live with her; she's my wife. But so I knew we were going to be underwater for most of it.
Right.
And the only way that I even like slightly prepared for that, and I told her this, was like, I'm on a ship. I am an intelligent elf, obviously, so I know that like if this ship goes down, gets attacked by pirates, gets attacked by Navy, whatever, right, that I'm going to need water breathing. Yep. So I'm going to prepare that spell every single day. And she was like, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right.
So it was me metagaming to some degree, but it was also like a conscious choice to be like, hey, me and my brother on the ship, I don't want to fucking die. I also don't want to drown, so water breathing.
Right. It wasn't a bad play.
It's just that's totally what I was saying. Like, because I think I brought that up when I got back to the table after making those drinks, was she was like, you guys could swap spells. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I was looking at mine because Artificer could swap theirs per long rest. And then Ross was swapping his, and I was like, wait, why are you swapping it? You're a bard. You don't get to do that.
Right.
Because we're taking long rest. You don't get to swap them out. You just have them. So, no, 100%. Yeah, she completely changed that class to make it easier because she's a nice lady. Which, yeah, cool. You can always change the rules and do all that stuff. We constantly talk about the freedom of being a DM. Like, you can do whatever you want.
No, exactly.
Because every rule is optional, technically.
Right.
And
well, the goal, especially with one-shots, is to have fun.
So, in summation, what I was going to say was, no, I don't give a fuck if you're miserable. Like, that's the point. Like, you are a hero. You need to figure out a better way to get out of it, right?
Right.
So, like, if you're underwater and I am playing an elf, and in Finrath, the elves there was a mass genocide against them. Everyone hates them. Like, humans are super racist against elves in Finrath, especially in the year that we're playing in her campaign.
Right.
And Ross plays a human. He made the conscious choice to choose getting a +1 to all of his abilities versus being an elf, which he could have done.
Right.
And he could have taken even disguise self, whatever. Like, there's all kinds of stuff he could have discussed with Brie about it. but he made the choice to min-max instead of actually like playing with the lore and stuff. So his character was like playing music, and my character's an elf, and I was like, I fucking hate human music. It's disgusting. And then like I as an elf, I was like, I'm not going to give him water breathing as the ship's going down and we're getting taken underwater. I'm going to protect the people I care about first.
Yep.
Fuck him.
Right.
And then there's the little girl Mary, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not a heartless elf by any means, and she's an innocent little girl. She's never done anything. She probably wasn't even alive during the war that happened, right? So there's no reason why I wouldn't try to save her. She's a baby, right? Versus Mikkel, son of Jack, who's just this really flamboyant, like out there, like bard who thinks he's all that, and I'm like, no, I'm not saving you. Like you could save yourself, fine, leave, right?
You a grown ass man.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just it's a whole bunch of things that all go into like actually role playing a character and like being there for it versus just being like, oh, I have a +5 to all my abilities, so I need to do this, which I think Ross did.
And I think Jack of all trades is definitely interpreted as you know a little bit about everything, so I kind of get it to a certain degree. Like I said, you are an adventurer, maybe you've been camping a few times, things like that, which gives you the passive bonus, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the DC's easier, and that's why for me DC's are variables that are based off of players and things like that.
And this is why I think instead of Jack of all trades just being like, oh, you get a +2 or like you get half your proficiency to everything, why the fuck would he know anything about medicine or survival, right? So why not just give them the ability to pick like 5 proficiencies, like a lot more than anyone else?
Well, they already get so many, like in all honesty,
they get expertise, but depending on all your proficiencies are based on your default class and the stuff you can pick from,
right?
And then it's based off of your background, right? So if he picks like a background and only gets like 1 additional ability, then he's going to be just like anyone else except for the expertise.
I thought they had a few more proficiencies than other classes.
I don't know. Let's look it up.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I think, oh my god, open book. Man, this new app from D&D Beyond, not here for it yet, because I don't know how to work it. Bard, search. Bard, Player's Handbook.
Should be page like 46 of the Player's Handbook.
Yeah, I got it right here. Creating a Bard, they get, at the earliest level, they get to choose any 3 skills. So they get to choose literally any 3 skills.
Right.
They're not limited by a list like everyone else is.
Gotcha, yeah.
So why not just turn that into like any 5 skills and then that be your Jack of all trades? See what I'm saying?
Right.
Your proficiency is what's supposed to show what you're proficient in.
Right.
So again, based on his backstory,
expertise and all kinds of stuff like that. So bards really are role playing kings, or queens.
And that's the thing. Based on the backstory that he gave as a famous singer who likes his money, likes his things, right? Like, why would he ever be out in the wilderness? Why would he be proficient in survival?
Right.
So, and you can choose that by being like, okay, well, I have 5 abilities from Jack of all trades, right? So I'm going to take this, and this. Oh, he went camping a few times whenever he was a kid, so he kind of remembered those skills from his dad, so that's survival. So you add like whatever to that, right?
Well, and it goes back to it goes back to Jack of all trades. I'm not going to say it's poorly written. It definitely was not play tested.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't play tested because it technically increases your initiative scores. It increases your
initiative, and it increases counterspell and dispel magic.
Yeah.
Because you make an ability check with your spellcasting ability modifier.
Right. Exactly.
And because your spellcasting ability is charisma and you have a +5 to it, you're not adding your proficiency to that, so you add half your proficiency to it, which is how Jack of all trades is worded.
Right.
Which is just stupid.
Which like a mid-maxed 20 has a 20 in charisma plus that at 20th level means that they're adding 8 to the roll, essentially. So at that point, if someone does use a 9th level spell and they choose to counterspell, they only have to roll like an 11 or higher on the dice.
Yeah.
And then you put in variables like luck and all that kind of stuff, and the chances of someone's like, oh, I meteor swarm, and it's like, no, you don't, almost guaranteed.
Yeah, 100%, which we found out with Tanakh because he was also a bard.
Right.
We started using the Jack of all trades feat with that, and then I took it away because you had a +6 to your charisma because of some other shenanigans that happened, which means at a minimum you had to roll a 10 or higher, which is a like 55% chance or something.
Yeah, for a 3rd level spell to cancel a 9th level
which
spell.
Means it just goes up like from, and then you had luck as well. So all of those things you're talking about happened with Tanakh, which is why I bitch about this so much. The bard,
it's why we also took it away, and it's not a bad thing to stop.
Yeah, until 10th level.
Right.
Finrat.com per my homebrew rules. But yeah, no, it's a mentality thing, right? So if I were playing a bard and I had jack of all trades, I would be like, oh, I don't fucking know how to do this. I'm like a singer. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean cut out the heart of a siren? Are you fucking insane?
Yeah, if you're the only one, if you're literally the only one that has a chance of it, go for it, sure.
Yeah, there's always a chance to succeed, but...
If there are people who are, like, actually proficient and stuff like that...
let them have their moment.
Let them have their moment, let them shine a little bit, you know? And we've talked about that as well, where even if you're good at everything, doesn't mean you have to be the person who does everything.
Yeah, and then it goes right into my next topic here, too, is charisma players, right? So if you play a warlock, if you play a bard, which Ross plays a warlock and a bard lately too, because I think he's discovered the power of persuasion, as a lot of new players tend to do. Should they always succeed on like persuasion checks? And I bring this up because I had fucking D&D Next is the bane of my existence now, because D&D Beyond cleaned up all their comment section. Now Reddit's going fucking wild. Because that's what we talked about last week was alignment, right?
Right.
And I had so much of an argument with those people. I really don't need to engage them, but it's so hard for me not to. Actually, sidebar here.
Yeah.
There was a person that was like, how do you guys write campaigns for D&D 5th edition? And then he goes into a long fucking whatever. I didn't read the article. But I was like, usually with a pencil, but if you're feeling frisky, you can type D&D campaigns as well. Like 6 upvotes.
Heck yeah.
Oh, sarcastic as hell.
Well, that's actually a decent question. Do you...
Let me go back to this. So in the article that this guy was talking about, he had a player that was... really good at like persuading everything. He was a something and a warlock, paladin warlock, I think. I don't know, padlock, something like that. Basically, had really high persuasion. At a minimum, he got a 22 to his persuasion roll. So it means if he rolled like a 1, it turned into a 22, which is fucking insane. I don't know how. I don't know the specifics of it, whatever. That's what the DM told me. And he has a book of shadows that he can get people to write their name in, and then he can communicate with them telepathically as long as he's on the same plane of existence and a whole bunch of other shit, right?
Okay.
So there's this general that they met, and it goes into like the story about it and all that stuff. And basically the general is giving them a task, and this warlock is trying to persuade a general in whatever army to write his name in this book, so this lowly little adventurer can communicate with him whenever he wants and know where he is. Right. It's this sketchy ass, dark, fucking leather
full
of creature, full of magic, like book. And the DM was like, I don't really know how to roll this because, like, I don't know how to play this because I don't want the general to just write his name in the book.
Then he doesn't write the name of the book, no matter how persuasive the character is.
That's what I said. That got me a lot of hate because they were saying like, oh, as a player, if I roll a 22 for persuasion, that means I should succeed. He should write his name in the book. And I was like, well, that's not how this works. And then I kept going back and forth with him, and I eventually said, oh God. Oh, that comment was so epic. But I fucking can't remember it. I basically said, why would a general write his name in the book? And then they came back and explained why he would, because they're working together, whatever, all that stuff. And I was like, all right, good. Now give me a persuasion check. The DC is going to be a little bit lower because you actually gave me an argument. You gave me a good argument to this.
Right.
And I guess that's what I'm all going back to is... how
do you explain it? How do you convince this individual to
if you walk up to me as a player, as Tanakh, and you're just like, I'm going to convince him to write his name in the book. I'll be like, make a persuasion check, right? That's what most DMs do. If you come up to me as a DM and say, I want to convince him to do this, I'm like, all right, well, what are you saying? What's your argument?
Yeah.
Like, what are you actually voicing out there? Which I think a lot of DMs skip. They just go straight to the dice rolling instead of like actually having the player role play that scenario. And if you give me a shitty argument as to not, I'm gonna be like, no. Or like Ross right now, he keeps trying to convince people to give him like half price for fucking items and shit. Like, oh, 4,000 gold. I'm only gonna give you 1,000, right?
Right. Well, and one of the things with persuasion, I did have a character in one of my very, very young DMing experiences that had a very high charisma for Pathfinder, and a lot of the times, and I allowed it to happen to a certain degree, would use his charisma to like influence the party and stuff like that. Which honestly, like if you're doing really cool, you're just there for shits and giggles, that's not too big of a deal.
Yeah.
If you're trying to tell a story though, that player usually tends to become a disruptive individual sometimes. Because they're like, oh, you should jump off this cliff. And then it's like, oh, but I'm so persuasive and that kind of thing. But the thing with persuasion is people do not put themselves at harm. And that's a very broad understanding, because you getting a magic item for half price could mean that now that shop doesn't have the gold to pay rent, and that puts the family at harm.
That also means they just wasted like weeks of their life, and just shit tons of gold,
right,
enchanting an item for you, and then you're like, no, I want it for 1,000.
Yep.
Like you're basically trying to convince to get it for free, which is not how persuasion works.
Well, and that's the other thing is with enchanting and all that kind of stuff, a lot of the shops technically, rules as written, break even with their prices.
Yes.
They barely make anything off of it, which sounds asinine because it's kind of like selling a car and then the car dealer only making $10.
Yeah, but it's also like the car dealer building it from his own factory in the back of his house.
Yeah, exactly.
Like so.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what I'm saying is like a lot of them don't actually make a lot of gold off of that kind of stuff.
Usually they don't.
And that's just kind of like a knowledge thing that people don't realize how the economics of D&D works in the background. And again, if you're doing really cool, sure, give your people free items, you know what I mean? But if you want to actually build an immersive world where actions have consequences, then you probably need to be like, I'm sorry, the most I can give you is like 5 gold off because, you know, like I have to feed my family.
Yeah.
And that's, if I don't, I put them in danger. I put myself in harm.
And I feel like that is a lot of the problem whenever you have like paladins, warlocks, bards, any sorcerers, any of the charisma based characters, a lot of like new players, especially in a lot of new DMs allow it. Like you shouldn't automatically succeed. Like just because your persuasion is a 22 does not make it a success. DCs still go above 20.
Yep.
Like also rolling a natural 20 for an ability check or a saving throw is not an automatic success in D&D 5e unless that is a home brewed like house rule.
I actually have a perfect example of that. So I wrapped up my campaign on Friday, and they fought a almost god tier level barbarian who was just wrecking face. And then I used the whole platinum rods getting sealed in a book thing, and the DC was 13, 18, 23. So each rod that went in made it more difficult, right?
Yeah.
And on the very last save, I rolled the save and got a natural 20. But his wisdom's an 8, so it's a -1. So it's a 19,
yeah,
and
so
he needed
fails.
a 23, fails. So I don't think that's something, I think people automatically think, oh, 20 plus is like automatic. It should always be successful.
No, and if I'm not mistaken, I never got to play any of the older editions, at least not a lot. But I think in older editions, it was crit success, right? Like
you could have critical
and then
successes,
you could crit
critical
fail
fails.
And literally die.
Yeah, there were rules and additions where if you rolled 2 1s in a row, that your character would die.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, and it gets really interesting because that's kind of like I go up to the winch and try to get like a 10% discount on drinks. All right, roll persuasion. Oh, I rolled a 1. Oh, you fumble a little bit. And it's like, all right, roll another 1 to confirm that you're critically failed. It's like I rolled 1. It's like, all right, cool. You stub your toe, fall, and you fall on this dude's sword and you're dead. Roll your character. It's like why would that ever happen?
Why, like, 100%. Like Jesus
exactly.
Christ.
So it gets really interesting with a lot of those interactions. Persuasion, like people persuading other people at the table, is
I don't even allow it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not a check. It's more of like you actually have to persuade me to do it.
So like you and I play brothers in the 1 shot that we're doing for Brady now the 2 shot, and Ross's character is a human. I'm an elf. Because of everything I just told you, humans usually are racist against elves. Even if he's not, I still have that because you and I fought in the war, right?
Right.
We fought in the war to murder humans.
Yeah.
Because they were murdering us.
Right.
Also, you literally died with your character, and I brought you back to life. So, like, you literally have clipped ears and all kinds of like just grotesque, mangled stuff from this war.
Right.
So, like, why? A, I don't like human music anyway because I'm an elf, and elves are way better at harmonizing. But B, he rolled a 19 for his like performance check, and I was like, this is shitty music. I hate it. And he was like, but I rolled a 19. And I was like, that doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. That's my own personal opinion. Like, just because you rolled a 19 means you played well. It doesn't mean I enjoyed it.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Well, no matter how popular a musician is, there will always be people who do not like their music.
Exactly.
So no matter how well they perform, like Brendan Urie, he's a great musician, has a whole bunch of really good songs out there. There are people who are not going to like him or what he does.
Yeah.
Lil Nas, super controversial.
We talked about this, yeah.
Exactly. Super
I'm not a fan of Lil Nas's music.
Right. Doesn't mean he doesn't perform well.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that there aren't people who believe in his music and that he creates a great product. Just means that you personally don't enjoy it.
Yeah, he probably rolls a nat 20 every time he performs. I wouldn't know that because I'm not listening to it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So like, it's just one of those mentalities that I don't know how to like work that out. I don't know like what causes that other than, well, a little bit of an experience and an immersion thing. Like,
right.
I think people have a tendency not to get immersed in their characters. And the reason I bring this up is because of, another D&D Next article that I read where they were talking about, this wasn't D&D Next. This was just a DM asking for advice. So he has a character, a player that took Observant, which gives you a +5 to your passive perception and passive insight.
Right.
Or passive investigation, passive investigation. On top of that, you gain the ability to read lips at a distance as long as you speak the language that they're speaking, right?
Right.
Well, that turned this player's 14 into a 19 for their passive perception, and he was saying like, well, when the player was like rolling for perception checks, he would roll like a 12, and he'd be like, but my passive perception's a 19, so I should succeed. That's not how passive perception works.
Right. It's more of noticing things in passing or
or sleeping.
Or statically. Yeah.
Like if you are sleeping, you base it off of your passive perception. So like you could just be a light sleeper, but if you're actually like looking for something, it could be like hidden under a piece of paper and you just don't notice it, right? And I completely forgot where I was going with this train of thought, but I had a point, I promise. I've had a lot of coffee today.
You're saying how do you get the mentality?
Yeah. So the reason I bring that up is because of immersion, right?
Right.
So you as a character, like me as Kavir, brother of Harris, right, the elf, I don't know what my stats are because stats don't exist when I am a character, right? They exist for the player to interact with the world.
Right. You just know
so
that
like you as a character, you don't know what the fuck passive perception is. That's just you walking into the room and like kind of noticing some of the stuff, right?
Right.
So as a DM, it's your job to tell the players when to roll something, not their job to roll something and then tell you what they're rolling.
Correct. You know what I'm saying? Correct. The DM declares when a check is even necessary.
Yeah.
Because again, taking into a high passive abilities means that sometimes you as the DM could roll it where you walk into a room and you don't need a roll necessarily.
Yes.
Like I said, with a tiered system that I use, if my highest is an 18 and I do know that someone has a 19 passive perception in mind, there is a chance that I'm going to be like, oh, you walk in and out of the corner of your eye, you notice something shiny.
The other side of this too is the DM has to, like the player has to say, I would like to walk into the room and I would like to check the closet. Otherwise, you can't find the secret key hidden in the desk if you're looking in the closet. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, how the fuck would you know? You wouldn't know that there's just a secret key. You wouldn't spot that just as you walk into a room with your passive perception.
Right.
It doesn't matter how fucking high your passive perception is.
Exactly.
Unless it's just dangling out in the open.
Yeah, it's you looking. It's all.
So you have to actively go and look at the desk, which means you have to roll perception.
Right. No, it doesn't.
And he replied to me and he was saying like, well, how do I like? What if my player gets like butthurt about it, basically? And I was like, that's on them. That's their emotional state, not yours. You as the DM, you are there to be non-biased and to judge the rules for them.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is there's people who believe that they can win at D&D, right? And that's the mentality is that I need to win at D&D. I need to be the best at the table at D&D.
You guys didn't see that, but I just finger gunned him.
And it's one of those things where, like you said, like me, right? I set up a scenario for my guys to finish where they fought a barbarian. They inflicted 996 damage over the course of 13 rounds. Yeah, Lareth. And they inflicted a massive amount of damage, and there was a chance they failed. I mean, on the last round, he was downing 2 to 3 of them every round, and they were just lucky to actually have like a cleric, and there was a paladin there that was like giving him a handful of hit points here and there. Because like even if they got a full heal up to 70 hit points or whatever, 50 or whatever it is, his first attack minimum damage was 38.
Yeah.
So like, and that's if I roll all ones with Great Weapon Master and the Great Weapon Fighting style, meaning I reroll all the ones anyways. So like, I was doing an average of 45 to 52 damage.
Yeah.
So one of my players, you could tell, was a little bit exasperated because they had a blood feud per their background. That's where this character was generated from and stuff like that. And every time he'd stand back up, he'd just wham, just down. And he's like, well, son of a bitch. Like it's because he has a blood feud against him, right? And the only reason why he didn't full kill him while he was unconscious is because there were other threat targets. So he would like hit him, he'd go down. He'd hit I had a werewolf in my campaign. He'd hit her, she'd go down. The dude tried to seal him. He used his last legendary resistance and was like, you're the biggest problem now. I don't care how much I hate him. And just went over, smacked him twice. He went to 0 hit points. Like it was a very rough fight for them.
Yeah, it seems like it would be.
And it was a very brutal thing. But they had the chance. They had 3 chances to fail, to seal him away, or even potentially to kill him if circumstances were right.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of background on it. If a zealot barbarian after 16th level, even if they're at 0 hit points, if they were to die, they don't. They just stay alive.
Yeah, as long as
their
rage
ends.
Yeah, that's 14th level as well.
14th level, yeah. And And so my players were asking, they were engaging, they were like, hey, how do you even get around that? How do you stop that from happening? And I was like, well, technically anything that instantly kills them still happens. Which they used 3 disintegrates in that combat. Unfortunately, there was a gnome who counterspelled 2 of them, but he got hit with 1. If that had reduced him to 0, his body would just disintegrate to dust.
Yeah.
Power word kill, as long as they're below 100 hit points, would have instantly killed him if he was below 100 hit points. So there are still ways around it, even if it is more difficult to find.
Well, I like that you brought this up too, because this is another thing where I want my players to think outside the box, right? So if Bree, my lovely wife, I love her to death, but if she were to be like, oh, how do we get around this in the middle of combat, I would be like, you don't know. Like, how would Cap know how to get around this, right? Like, think and try to figure it out. Do other stuff. Read your spells. Figure out that Disintegrate does this, right? Like, and then just try it.
Well, then in the rules of Finwrath.com for homebrew, if he were to take necrotic damage at being 0, he would also die.
Yeah, you die instantly.
And so that could have killed him.
Because you're rotting away.
But nobody was inflicting necrotic damage.
Yeah.
And actually the werewolf was playing a blood hunter, and the third and final pact that she picked for the last fight was the necrotic one, but she was only but she chose the psychic instead of necrotic.
Yeah.
Which means that if she hit him once while he was down to 0 hit points, he would have died.
Yeah.
Right? So me as a player, me as a DM, I had those set up where they could win or they could fail. And I think people think that it's me versus the DM, or it's the DM versus the party, and that's never really how I've played the game, at least.
Yeah. My job is to be non-biased. My job is to tell you what you can and can't do, right?
Right.
I take a more strict approach to that, which I will fully admit that I am way stricter than other DMs. I don't like Rule of Cool. I think it's really stupid sometimes. I don't think you should be able to fucking dolphin out of the water and like do 300 spins and then chop the head off of the big baddie. Like, that's stupid, and I don't like anime for that reason, right? Like, that's just me as a person.
Right.
But if you come up with some really cool way, like the gnome wizard grabs you with telekinesis and launches you out of the water, and then you go and chop off his head, that makes fucking sense to me, and it would probably work if you're willing and all that stuff, right? You just gotta make a few checks. That's all it is.
Well, it's like kind of like the blade wizard that I played this weekend.
We're talking so much.
The Blade Wizard I played this weekend, whenever it activates a song, goes from 30 to 40 feet, and then I hastened myself, so I went from 40 to 80 feet, which means when I was swimming underwater, I still had a 40-foot movement speed.
Yeah.
And it's just like one of those things where it's like, oh no. Yeah. He's a bad man.
You also should have had disadvantage with your rapiers. Don't know if you knew that, because there's certain weapons underwater that you can actually use, and I don't think Bree noticed it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder, they are finesse, so I wonder if that's part of it.
It's like... it's very specific weapons, and then it includes like short swords, daggers, things like that. Rapier might be on the list, but I don't remember.
Yeah, that's fine.
So it's very specific weapons that you don't have disadvantage with, and then like the range of everything is reduced down to its like first value instead of all the way at the end.
Right, and you're still at disadvantage to shoot and all that kind of stuff.
I wasn't gonna bring it up because Bree's very rule of cool anyway, but
yeah. No, it's all good.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, sort of missed commenting on comments again. Technically, I've been commenting on a lot of D&D Next stuff, but I have one more thing I wanted to talk to you about today.
All right.
Let's increase this a little bit and jump over to some Shadow Boxing by Harris Heller. Oh, listen to that synthwave. Oh, wait. Commenting on comments. Magic.
The quality increases here each week.
So, the thing I want to talk to you about, D&D Next. The bane of my existence now, taking up way too much of my time. A guy came on there and they were discussing why the monk should have a D10 hit dice instead of a D8. Where do you stand on this? And then I'll get into the article.
Let's see. D10 is reserved specifically for what? Fighter, paladin?
Fighter, paladin, ranger, a lot of the martial classes. More martial classes. Interesting. Blood hunter is a D10. Well.
I could actually see it being a D10 because it is traditionally a martial class. What makes it kind of a D8, in my opinion, is ki being a form of body magic, for lack of a better term.
I like where you're going with this.
And once you kind of get those special effects of like making your fist magical or having abilities that you burn ki in order to like teleport and those kinds of things.
Focusing on the other abilities that the class actually grants to, because this guy did not.
Once you kind of add that casting level to it, is where it, instead of it being a D10, it becomes a D8, much like your druid, bard, and in this case monk.
Okay. So what would you classify the monk as? You know, like paladins are tanks. Rogues are DPS.
Right.
Druids are supposed to be support casters. What is the monk?
To me, it's DPS.
Okay.
It's utility DPS, which is a little bit strange, which I think is why it's not played as much.
Because it's like you get 4 attacks and 4 potential chances to do stunning strike.
Exactly, and you can stun, you can burn things, you can get 4 attacks at level 5. You can but you also with like the Shadow Monk have utility of going through shadows and all these kinds of other effects.
So you took a different train of thought than me. I classify it as a mobility DPS character, just like a rogue, because they can use their key as a bonus action to disengage, dash, all that stuff.
Right.
You just have to spend a key point. But you have a number of key points equal to your monk level anyway, so if you're 20th level, you have 20 fucking key points, and you could spend as many of them as you want on a turn.
Right.
But what people were saying whenever I brought that point up was that you forego your DPS side of it. And I was like, I didn't say they were a good DPS, I just said they were DPS.
Right.
My first question to this guy, because he brings up, oh my God, so much just stuff, right?
Yeah.
Basically, he disagrees with it. He thinks that a monk should be a D10 because they have excellent mobility, they have all these things, but they have to like do key points to like disengage and dash and all that stuff, so they can't avoid. They're supposed to be in the middle of combat, but they don't have enough hit points to sustain themselves. And I was like, well then, does that mean that a rogue should be a D10 like thing? Because they should be in the middle of combat too.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, rogues have a ranged option. And I was like, some monks have a ranged option.
Yeah, Radiant Soul.
And
Monk.
so everything I was like throwing at them, they just kept downvoting me and shit because like they disagreed with it. Not even Radiant Soul. You can use like darts and shit as a monk.
Yeah.
You can use like the Kinsei monk as well can get like a bow and arrow.
Right.
So it's just a matter of this guy or girl, whoever wrote this, they basically blame it on racism, which I liked. So it says right here, the idea of a monk is a lightweight, speedy type that doesn't fit with D10 hit dice. I understand that immersion in fantasy is subjective, but well, I don't know any other way to say this. I think that some part of why the class is still like this, even in 5e, is leftovers from the undeniable racism of Oriental adventures. In the US in 1985, when that came out, casual racism was common. This extended to commonplace sayings about how rice-based meals left you hungry after an hour, etc. I think that this attitude is evident in the idea that an Eastern-style martial artist can't take a punch as well as a Western archetype. Silence. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Sorry,
too.
wait. What was it? What's the? Are they the most popular toy from 1976? Stretch Armstrong, because that was a reach. You know.
Yeah.
Like that's,
And also of note, several people pointed this out to him in the comments that the monk did not come about in the Oriental Adventures in 1985. It came out before that in a totally different style that wasn't racism or anything like that.
Right.
And so that all boils down to monks. Like, why are people so upset about a monk being in D&D?
Right.
It is an additional class. It's fun to play. People love Kung Fu. People love Avatar and being able to like throw fire with their fists. Like,
well, also the thing that really
the monk
upsets
is
me.
It's a form of magic as well. It actually says that whenever it describes what ki is.
Right.
It's an inner magic that you tap into the weave or whatever.
To make yourself faster, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I really disagree that people think that the only way to be a tank is with hit points.
Yeah.
With the monk, you have unarmored defense with your wisdom, right?
Yeah,
so
wisdom and dex.
Let's say you were able to mid-max and have 20-20, right? That means that you just standing there with no armor on have an AC of 20.
An AC of 20, yeah.
Right.
Which an average person cannot get through.
Right.
On top of being able to take the dodge action as a bonus action, which no other character other than a rogue can do in D&D.
Right, and it feels like it. The more bonus actions you get, it feels like there's less hit dice you have. The more options you have,
the more shit you can do to avoid damage, right? And I'm not saying everyone has to play their monk this way. You can make a constitution-based monk if that's what you like. But the reason, and everybody kept saying like, oh, well, they're supposed to be hardier. It's all about honing their body and honing their mind. And I was like, then why not change all of their wisdom-based stuff to constitution, or change dexterity to constitution instead?
Right.
And everybody was like, no, that doesn't make sense. They need to have something to deal damage. And I was like, you're the one wanting to say that their dexterity isn't based on their body. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's their speed. That's them honing their body to be quick, right?
Yeah. They can take the G-forces of movement.
There's also nothing that says there can't be a strength monk, because it allows you to use your fists as strength or dexterity.
Yeah.
People just go with speed because that's what they think makes a great fighter.
Right. You could 100% be the just big ass dude who just punches someone in the face with strength.
Yeah.
We were talking about doing a grappler build with the Unearthed Arcana, like grappler feet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That would be really cool to have a strength-based monk where you're like literally grabbing people and
you just grab someone by the throat and then just start punching them in the stomach.
Exactly.
Like that's a brawler.
Because then you have like advantage if they're grappled with that feet and stuff like that. But then you could also take like spell sniper, so you're just kind of like this big dude who beats up nerds.
Yeah.
Because you have a wizard who's like, Vada cut, and he's just like, shut up, nerd. You know, like that kind of thing.
And I guess that all boils down to how you want to play your monk. Yeah. Just because it's a monk, just because the class is called monk, does not mean you have to go into the monastic traditions of whatever, right?
Yeah.
You can play just a brawler.
Right.
Like you can play a drunken master that just likes to beat the shit out of people. Right. It doesn't have to be kung fu. It doesn't have to be Eastern European. Right. It doesn't have to be like Eastern philosophies. Right.
Well, you
can make it however you want.
A lot of people think of monks as like Tibetan monks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in reality, even in the description, it talks about them being assassins and all this kind of stuff.
Shadow monk, man.
Right. It's more of you're kind of like a paladin of the body versus a paladin of the soul. Is essentially
a paladin with an oath. You don't have that oath.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So you've just trained your body to tap into the weed.
Right, exactly. So yeah, but at the end of the day, if wizards came out and they're like monks are D10s now, I'd be like, oh no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's only going to improve it. It's just that was the thing that got me was the logic that they were using as to why a monk was a D8 versus D10.
Right.
The reason it's a D8 is because it's mobile. It's supposed to be a mobile fighter.
Right.
Because if you say like, oh, like monks are a D10 now, rogue should be a D10 then.
Right. Well, and I think that is so there's defining features of why things have certain hit dice that we've talked about. Pure casters have a D6 because they have the ability to
regain spell slots.
Right.
With a short rest or whatever.
Yeah, right.
The exception to that being a warlock because they only get 2 spell slots. So.
Right.
3, whatever.
Your almost casters, your like half casters, you would say, are typically a D8. That's typically where they stand if they have some kind of additional magical abilities, and then your fighters are typically your D10, D12.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that a battle master can't do anything or anything like that, but it's not magic based traditionally, or an eldritch knight or anything like that.
I think
but those are all subclasses that spec into it.
Yeah, I think you misspoke on that a little bit because the half casters and the quarter casters are all subclasses. So like an eldritch knight is a quarter caster.
Well, so like a paladin is a half.
Oh, I see what you're saying. And they're a D10 though, because
D10.
they're not all about that. Rangers are also half caster, and they are a D10.
And in all honesty, with the way they built paladins in this edition, it's not for them to take a giant sword, or it's for them to take a giant sword and use spell slots for divine smite.
Yeah, it's not really for like casting a bunch of other shit.
Regardless of how you feel about it, that's exactly what they did when they built it. Is they were like, oh, you get extra D8s if you do this. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because I'm of the mindset that by using the same logic that these guys were applying to the monk. Why doesn't a sorcerer have a D8 or a D10 hit dice?
Right.
They're all about like the inner, all the magic comes from within. It's all from their body, right? They're using their body as a weapon to cast spells. Like charging that much energy through your body would literally blow up a normal person. So like, why couldn't it be a D8 caster?
Exactly.
See what I'm saying? So like the argument just keeps going down this rabbit hole of like nonsense. Whenever Wizards of the Coast and the game designers, Jeremy Crawford and Mike Merles, they know what the fuck they're doing.
Yep.
Like they understand that. Yes, they may write things in a weird way, like Jack of all trades, but it's the way. It all boils down to like fandoms, right? Ruining stuff. Nerd culture is very elitist.
Right.
And that's just so shitty because I'm extremely elitist when it comes to certain nerd things. But at the same time, like I understand where people come from. Like I understand why season 8 of Game of Thrones wasn't as good as the other seasons, but I understand why they did it.
Right.
I understand why Supernatural had to end in the 15th season, even though it's my favorite show. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't feel like other people do that.
No, and again, as far as the monk's concerned, in my opinion, it having ki and having magical effects is why it's a D8, essentially.
That and the ability to get a 20 AC without any kind of help.
Right.
The speed increase that it gets, like all of that stuff, monks basically get a free mobile feat, which is insane. Like,
then you add mobile and all kinds of stuff. You can make them truly terrifying. But again, I think people focus on hit points. They're like, oh, I have to have hit points. But in reality, like you could take 2 weapon fighting as a monk. You could have
21.
both of them, and you'd have a 21 AC just standing out.
2 short swords.
And for instance, when we played the one shot, your wife put sirens against us that only have a +3 to hit. My Blade Wizard had a 24 for AC, but only 45 health, meaning that they had to roll natural 20s to hit me.
Yeah.
So they had a 5% chance to ever hit me.
And this is my fault when we were discussing this, because I was telling you not to min-max it because having a 25 AC is really fucking annoying, especially for my lovely wife who is not a DM
Right.
By trade. So I originally was looking at it like, oh, you have a 25 AC, that's going to be fucking impossible to hit, and you're going to have all these hit points and stuff. And then when you actually rolled your hit dice, it kind of dawned on me, that's the whole reason you get to add your intelligence, is to make it to where you don't get hit.
Right.
Because when you get hit once as a wizard at level 10, you're just going to fucking die.
Yeah, 45 hit points.
Yeah, I took 30-something hit points from one attack from one of those sharks or whatever, and that would have literally been over half your health, and you would have died.
Right.
And on the second attack.
Right, exactly.
So,
and I think that's
I get it now, is what I'm saying.
Right, and that's why D&D 5th edition scaled back AC and all that kind of stuff, is they made it a little bit more of an element. Now in your upper levels, whenever, for instance, Lareth, my big boss, had a plus 17 to hit, probably not going to matter as much at that point. But that's also a 20th level character with a whole bunch of extra stuff going for him. Like, gets pretty insane.
I got shorter because my chair is broken. Yeah, sorry, I kind of ruled this whole thing, but it's just stuff that I wanted to talk about because it's real annoying to watch people play D&D like that, because it's supposed to be a fun game, right? It's not supposed to be elitist like that. It's supposed to be very inviting, and you're supposed to role play a character.
Right.
So like, why would you, I don't know, why would you always want to succeed on stuff, you know?
Right.
Why would you make a charisma-based character that you know is going to be fucking annoying? Why would you play a chaotic neutral rogue knowing that you're just going to be a dick the whole time?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a build where con wasn't the third stat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, if you are really concerned and you want to be up there just brawling and stuff, make con your best stat.
I do that every single time I build a character. I choose Constitution over Dexterity every time.
If D10 is so important to you, or having that extra health is so important, put a 20 in there, right? Have at level 10 have plus 50 to whatever you roll on the dice, and then take the tough feat.
Yeah.
So that you're sitting there with 90 plus whatever you roll on dice for health.
Yeah.
So you're a level 10 character with 100%. An average of like 150 health or something
There's
like that.
no reason why you can't be a strength-based ranger. There's no reason why you can't be a strength-based rogue or a strength-based monk. Like, instead of taking dexterity, take that little bit of hit and just make it strength your second best stat. Or still take dexterity, and then instead of just focusing everything into wisdom, focus constitution.
Yeah. Everyone wants that maximum damage and all that kind of stuff.
They want maximum damage. They want maximum AC. Like that's all it is.
Right. They want to mid-max every aspect of a character versus
they want to always succeed, which brings us all the way back to the beginning of this like topic.
Success is dependent on each person and what their goals actually are.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that also means that doesn't mean that things are easier for you.
So to sum that up, if it were me and I was DMing those sirens and everything like that, I 100% would not have allowed Ross to even roll because he's not proficient in it, regardless of what Jack of all trades says.
Yeah, and see, for me, it'd be more of, if there's no one there that's in survival, you need to get the job done, I would still allow him to roll, but the DC is going to be a little different than someone who's proficient.
It's going to be way higher.
Because that's kind of where I would go.
He wouldn't know how to do it. And that's what it boils down to.
Exactly.
And I feel like players hate that. They hate that because it's like, oh, but I have a +5 into it. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not proficient in it, and why would you even know anything about that?
Yeah.
Which is why I always ask those questions when we're at the table, right? So like, what are you looking for? What are you doing?
Yeah. Why would he know how to pick a lock?
Yeah. You know what I mean? You would. Because that's what he was trying. Didn't he do that when I left the room? He was trying to get into the ship, the underdeck or whatever. He was like exploring, and she was like, the door's locked and he doesn't have thieves tools. And I was like, I have thieves tools. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Good times. Yeah. There was just so much stuff on D&D Next. You need to check it out. Like it has some really good articles and really good discussions on stuff, but it's all stuff that's like, it's very player based. Like give me a D10 because I'm a monk.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing we talked about last week with, wizards, please wizards, don't take away alignment.
Like, yeah.
Crazy times. Well, I'm sorry we didn't get to your commenting on comments because I just like to ramble. Because I'm an angry man.
just anger, pure rage.
Yeah, pure rage. Yeah. That's why I'm a barbarian.
I was gonna say that's what I'm gonna talk about next week for my commenting on comments.
Yeah, next week will be a lot better actually too, because I'm not gonna focus on D&D Next at all. It's annoying. God, players just be satisfied. So we can wrap this one up a little bit.
Yeah, that works for me.
As always, this is sponsored by Finrat.com, D&D Homebrew. I actually am working on an article to add on there later. I think I'm going to take some of the pictures that my lovely wife has drawn, and I'm going to turn them into monsters and then walk through my process of creating them. So I'm probably going to hand one off to you or something and let you like kind of figure out where the stats would be, what kind of character is an aberration, is it a monstrosity, things like that, right?
Right.
And then I'm going to talk through how to create those.
Right.
So be on your A game is what I'm saying, Jake.
No deal. Hungover it is.
I recently swapped over from Twitch to just YouTube, so now I stream on there for a little bit. So it's just youtube.com, and then you search for ZombieNikon in the top bar. All of the links will be in the description of this podcast, and this podcast is available everywhere where you can find podcasts. And on Wednesdays, I upload it to my YouTube channel. Again, ZombieNikon, so you can actually watch a little bit of gameplay and have it playing in the background. Is that it?
Yeah, tell all your friends about it so we can be rich and famous.
Yeah, tell your friend, tell your wife. We want to get rich. So I'm going to let this fade on out now.